All right. Well, with that, we have to imagine it's going to be Gane versus Ngannou, two former teammates. I think the lines open pretty even, right? Both minus 110, if I
Yeah,
recall
very
correctly.
close, very, very close.
Yeah. And I think that makes sense. But from watching this and what you've seen of Francis, who do you like in that fight? What do you think happens?
I'll admit that I think that this line being pretty much dead even is a bit of an overreaction. I think that Gon showed a lot in his evolution, but I also think there's a tendency to favor a guy who won, and even handily, a bit too much going into a fight. And I know that the way that Francis would win this fight would be the same way that Derek Lewis would beat Gon. However, they are two totally different guys. I think part of it depends on the Francis Ngannou we see. If we see this patient Ngannou that we saw with Stipe Part 2, I think that it might be a short night. I think the fact that they've been training partners in the past will play a lot, and I think that, as much as they'll be afraid of each other, they also won't. They know what to expect, and they might be used to the striking of each other. But obviously, when you're sparring at this size, you're not going to use all of your power, but at least some type of rhythm to the other guy. I know we've talked about power and Gone, and I was even critical of like he hasn't gotten finishes lately, and especially as he's climbed the rankings a bit. I will say when you're in the heavyweight division, you have power. It's just more of a relative thing. It's
Yeah.
whether you have Francis power or I don't know, not Francis power type of thing. But I stick to kind of my thought on patience there. If Francis can stay patient, not blitz in like he did to Rosenstrike, if he waits for his shot and he's not afraid to close in, maybe like when we saw the fight with him and Derek Lewis, where they didn't want to engage. I think if he shows that willingness to engage, waits for the shot, I just don't see him losing this fight. But I think it'll be one for the ages. I think these are two shredded heavyweights. They both bring, I want to say, a lot more technical style from Gon, but this just incredible power also from Francis. Um, I can't wait for this card.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. Maybe I'm so easily swayed and I'm suffering from some recency bias here, but I really think Gone is just better than Francis. I think I might eat those words, but I think what we saw from Gone and what we've seen the last couple of fights at just such a high level, I think he can move better, so much better than any heavyweight in that division. I think he's strong enough to not feel overwhelmed by Francis's pressure. I think the fact that he's trained with him so often and gone, we've just seen him this whole week be so calm, cool, collected against a guy in Derek Lewis who's dangerous. Maybe he's not as technique oriented and as quite as dangerous as Ngannou, but
Right,
he has the most knockouts of anyone
right, right.
in the
You
UFC
can't
in the
sell him short
UFC
there.
history, heavyweight history. And so I think that combined with the fact that he's trained with Ngannou, I think some of the Mike Tyson effects of Ngannou
Totally, that's
be
fair.
might be gone because of that. And so I mean it can work either
But that
way.
doesn't make him less dangerous. That's the thing. Just because you're not
And
afraid of it doesn't mean you
yeah,
can't get caught by it.
and if sometimes there's always that psychological aspect too, where if what a guy is constantly big brothering you in the gym,
Yeah, totally.
you psychologically think you can't beat them and you won't be able to show up. So I don't know how those training sessions went from the footage we saw. I know they're not going 100%. I'd say Gon was oftentimes outlanding him. There's a couple of clips where
You can
Francis,
outland Francis.
yeah, exactly,
You can still lose that fight quickly.
yeah,
But yes,
yeah.
no, that's all fair,
So
and especially if you're the more technical fighter, you'll probably have those opportunities.
yeah, I just don't think Francis has fought anyone who can move remotely as good as Gon can. So I think if I'm a betting man going into this fight, I'm probably picking Gon
Can
as
I
of right
can I pause you here? What
now.
was who was Francis's last fight?
Yeah, some no name I think.
Yep. So like the guy who we all call the goat of the heavyweight division, he
Yeah,
cracked him and finished him in the second round. And it's mind blowing to me that we jump into this fight and say that they're dead even. And I'm not saying that Gon can't win, but I think this is a little bit of the recency bias because again, Gon and Stipe are two completely different fighters, but
yeah,
there's a lot going on when you weigh out all of the angles of this.
yeah. Well, I think with Francis, he's just so good at if you fight a certain style, you're going to end up unconscious against him. I think Gane is the only style that can weather that storm. I think it's, and so it's, the MMA math might not work.
Yeah.
Like I think Stipe probably
Or it
finishes
could
Derek
work.
Lewis.
Yeah.
I,
That's
I
why they
think
have the
Stipe
fights. We could find out.
would finish Derek Lewis, and we'd probably see a dominant performance from him there. But I think matchup wise, Stipe doesn't have. Stipe relies on his chin, and oftentimes, like he
Yeah.
gets tagged. He was getting tagged in those Cormier fights.
He got tagged by Francis in the first fight.
Yeah. He
And he
got.
fought through it.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
only
And
guy
then,
to be able to do that.
and so, yeah, I think once he couldn't get that takedown, he just was in trouble. But I
Yeah.
think Gane's mobility and Gane's also more muscular, way bigger
Oh
than
yeah.
Stipe too. So I think that plays a factor as well. So
I think I think
yeah,
Francis, if we see him able to fight back, I know that sounds like a silly thing to say, but Derek Lewis didn't really fight. He couldn't fight back. I don't want to say he didn't. I mean, partially mental, and I think he did admit this in a couple of the interviews. He felt the pressure of the week, and I think when you start getting those barrages of punches on you, I think it's easy to kind of crumble into that. But one thing I've always felt about Ngannou is when you have the story he does and the life he had, getting punched in a cage is not the type of pressure that you've already been through, and you're
yeah,
used to it. But I'm also really curious because this will be the first title defense. I mean, you're not trying to climb the mountain anymore. You are the mountain, and guys are trying to come after you. Does that change his mindset? I know he's been celebrating around the world, and nothing wrong with that. But does he have that same hunger from before? I don't want to question the guy, but it's a question you ask of any champion. So many angles here, and maybe none of that stuff matters except who punches harder. We'll find out.